Hey everybody, JC here with another TNI toy review, and today we're taking a look at the new Robocop 3.0 with light action feature figure from Jada Toys. Now this figure is, I guess they call this 6-inch scale. The figure doesn't actually stand quite 6 inches, and we'll get into more of that as we go further into the review, but I believe they pretty much are considering this a 6-inch scale line. Now this is basically Robocop based on the new upcoming Robocop movie, the 3.0 version, which is all black, as opposed to Robocop 1.0 in the movie, which is all silver and looks a little bit more like the classic Robocop that we're all used to. The packaging actually I think is pretty decent. It's got black and red highlights on it with a picture of the Robocop character on the side, and the figure's clearly displayed in the blister so you can see what you're getting. Multilingual card back, so you've got multiple languages going on, basically telling you that it's got a light up visor, and you can actually test out the feature because there's a little cutout in the plastic in the middle where you can push the button on his chest to see his eyes light up. So you probably want to make sure that you test the figure before you buy it. Make sure that like the battery hasn't run dead or something on the figure. The back of the packaging shows the other figures in the line, which basically for this 6-inch 6 or 5-inch scale line is basically the 1.0 Robocop, which is the silver version, and then the 3.0, which is the black version that we're looking at today. Then there's a little brief bio about the movie, again in multi-language, and then down below is pictures of other figures in their 3.25-inch scale line, and then there's also a 12-inch, I believe it's 12-inch talking Robocop figure that they show at the bottom as well. Now this line of figures is being done by a company called Jada Toys. We don't usually see a lot of action figures from these guys, but that's who's making this line of movie-based Robocop toys. And I basically will tell you right off the bat that these really aren't being made with, I don't think, with the adult collector in mind. These are definitely geared, I think, more towards kids, quality-wise and everything. So, you know, if you're an adult collector and you're wanting a high quality, highly articulated figure, this line is probably not going to be for you. In fact, you'll probably want to wait and get the Play Arts Kai Robocop figures that are coming out from Square Enix, which should be highly detailed and articulated. But again, this line I think is geared more towards kids and is just your basic movie line. So let's get the figure open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figure outside of the packaging. As I mentioned before, the figure stands about just under 6 inches tall, about 5.75 inches high. I believe they are considering this a 6-inch scale line, but probably 5-inch, since I would consider Robocop to be a taller figure or a taller character. Yeah, since he's 5.75, I would say this probably would be better classified as a 5-inch line, which I forget if that's how they classified it or not in the press releases and everything. But the figure itself stands just at about 5.75 inches tall. Now the figure itself, it's got some decent sculpting details on the actual body of the figure for the armor and everything. Where the figure is really weak as far as like sculpting and everything goes is on the face, on the flesh tones part of the face. At least with my figure, he really doesn't even have a mouth. You can kind of, if you really, I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but if you look really closely, you can kind of see where they look like they had started to do a little indentation for a mouth. But really, for the most part, there is no. It's basically almost a smooth, just flesh-toned plastic there under his eyes. So, you know, definitely for that portion of the figure, it looks pretty bad. Now the armor side of it though isn't too bad. It's got, you can see the corporation logo on his chest, and then he's got like the sculpting for his abs and everything, and just the armor pieces, which don't look too bad. The paint on the helmet's a little shinier than the rest of the figure, which I think is movie accurate. And then again, he's got one hand that's got a black glove on, and then one hand that's flesh tone. And again, the flesh tone paints don't look that good. It's almost very bright kind of color. Not a lot of detail on the hand at all, just like with the face. So, you know, the flesh parts of the figure is where the figure is definitely the weakest as far as sculpting and paint and everything goes. Fortunately, there's only 2 small parts on the figure that have flesh on it. So, on the back, he's got some screw holes that, you know, you can clearly see, but otherwise, you know, nice detailing with the line work and everything on the helmet. And then on the back of the helmet, the back of the head is again more of a, instead of the shiny paint, is more of a flat paint. So it's a nice texturing there on the helmet and on the back and everything. You've got parts that's got shinier paint for the armor and then duller paint, which I think is nice. Now the figure comes with 2 accessories, basically 2 guns, his pistol, and then he comes with a rifle. And he holds both weapons pretty well. And there's actually not some halfway decent detailing on the weapons, especially with the pistol. I think they did a pretty nice job with the detailing on the weapons. So the accessories are pretty decent, even though it would have been nice if it had some kind of holster, working holster or something like that, but unfortunately not. Basically all the figures in this line, whether it's the 5 or 6 inch scale or the 3 1/4 inch scale, come with these same 2 weapons. So I don't know if these are the only 2 weapons he uses in the whole movie, but it's definitely basically the only 2 weapons you're going to get with these figures. And then he has one other feature where you push this button on his chest and his eye lights up red. Now this would be a cooler feature to me if the light on his eyes stayed on for a couple minutes after you push the button. As soon as you release the button, the light goes off. So unless you want to just basically stand there holding the button the entire time, the light won't stay on, which I think is a little disappointing. If they're going to do a feature like this, it'd be nice if maybe the light stayed on for a few minutes after you push the button, so you're not having to constantly hold it. Now just to give you some more ideas about scaling, here he is next to Hasbro's Iron Man 2 Iron Man figure. So you can see Iron Man's a little bit taller. And then here he is next to NECA Toys classic Robocop figure, which is a 7 inch scale figure, so obviously the NECA one's going to be taller. Here he is next to the Jada Toy 3 1/4 inch scale Robocop figure. And I actually kind of like the 3 1/4 inch scale line better. We'll do a review of the smaller figure probably in the next day or so, but I just want to give you a comparison shot of the 2 right now. And as I said, I do kind of like this. If I was going to pick a line to collect from Jada Toys for Robocop, I'd probably suggest you go with the 3 1/4 inch. Just a little bit better articulation and such. But as I said, we'll get into more details on the 3 1/4 inch figure when we do a review of that one the next day or so. But for articulation, it's pretty basic for this figure. Again, not too surprising. As I mentioned before, I think these figures are pretty much being made for kids, not really with the adult collector in mind. And so there's not a great deal of articulation on this figure. He can move his head a little bit to the left and right, but he has no up and down movement at all. He's got ball hinged joints at the shoulder, but with the way the armor is sculpted, you know, he can only get some movement up That's about as much up as he can put the arm. He can, move the arm in a circular motion, but he can't put it out very much because of the way the armor piece is sculpted. And then his shoulder is a single jointed hinge joint. And again, he doesn't have a whole lot of movement in the elbow with the way the armor pieces are sculpted. No swivel or hinge at the wrist at all. No midsection articulation at all. Legs are, again, ball hinge joints, but again, because of the way the armor pieces are sculpted on the leg, he doesn't get a lot of movement out of them. He can't really put the legs out at all, so no splits for this figure. He can do the leg up. He can do the leg forward, but he can't put the leg back very much. And then again, because of the way this armor piece is sculpted, he doesn't get a lot of movement outward. Single hinge knees, again, not a lot of mobility there. Can only bend the knees part way, again with the way everything is sculpted. And then there's no ankle joints at all, no swivel or anything. So again, overall very very basic articulation on this figure. Okay, so that about does it for the review. Overall, this is a very basic figure. Low price point in today's market for a 6-inch figure. This figure costs about $12 at Toys R Us, which is where I found this figure. Basic articulation, basic detail, but again, I think this figure is really made for kids, not adult collectors. And really, I mean, other than the fact that they failed to give this character or this figure a mouth, the detail is really not that bad. I think they did a pretty good job on the armor pieces itself. It's just on the flesh parts that they kind of were lacking. And then it's got decent accessories with the 2 weapons, and then it's got the play feature, which again I think would have been better if they'd made it so the light stayed on a few minutes after you push the button, so you're not having to constantly hold the button down. But it's still kind of a cool feature. So that pretty much does it. As I mentioned before, we'll be reviewing the 3 1/4 inch version of this figure from Jada Toys in the next day or so. And I do actually like the 3 1/4 inch figures a little bit better. Again, they're still primarily made for kids, but I think they've got a little bit better articulation and even a little bit better detailing. That one at least has a mouth. So until next time, I'll catch you later.